Someone has signed up. Okay, you have the list? Alreasin. Okay,
That's
Al,
me.
you go first.
Yeah, first, last, and always, right?
Evening, alreasin, 632 Conowingo Road. I just thought I'd take the opportunity. Jim and I were discussing this earlier. You went on a trip to Baltimore.
Yes, we
And maybe both of you would give the audience the impression of the trip from today.
Be happy to do that. Did you want to go first? We went to the Port of Baltimore today at the invitation of the port. The purpose of the trip was, I think, to let the council know, the council from Cecil County know how important the port is to the economic viability of the state, as well as how important dredging is to the viability of the port. They didn't dwell at length on dredging, but they certainly let us know that the channels do need to be dredged. There has to be a place to put the dredged material. One of the interesting things that I found was that 30% of the terminals at the port are privately owned, which I didn't realize that was the case. Two gentlemen from one of the private terminals, Rutger Terminal, we toured the port from land, and then we went on a boat and toured it from water, which gives you very different perspectives. And while we were on the boat, there was two gentlemen from Rutger, who was one of the private terminals, talked with us, and they're very enthusiastic about what's happening down there. The Port of Baltimore is the #1 port of entry for automobiles in the United States, which I didn't realize. #1 for sugar. And of course they bring in any number of different things, grains, coal, aluminum, alum, because that was one of the things that I was talking about while I was talking to the guy from Rutger. But anyway, it's a viable working port, well run, very automatic. Everything, I mean, there's a lot of automation there. The average salary at the port is about $55,000 plus some change. They impressed upon us that you don't need a college degree. The private terminal that we talked with is not unionized. They're a non-union entity. What else am I forgetting? Did I pay attention? Overall, I thought it was a great trip. It was very interesting to me because it's been years since I had been down there. I think that the port realizes that unless we get water, good water, to the residents that are going to be at Bayview Shores and Bayview Estates and Westview Shores, we're not going to be happy, and we'll be pushing back. And they realize that. And whether they do it, whether the state does it, whether the Army Corps of Engineers do it, I think that something will be done to get those people water. But I think Pierce Creek will be open, and I've thought that all along.
I think the main focus of the entire trip was that the Port Authority wanted to impress upon Cecil County government, both the council and the executive branch, how important the port was to the state of Maryland and to Cecil County. And they actually have a map here on several of the companies in Cecil County that do business at the port, ship in or out of the port directly. And that over 108,000 jobs are linked to the port, whether it's direct or indirect or somewhat related. Between the truck drivers, the people that repair equipment, forklifts, cranes, trucks, chassis, containers, and so forth and so on. And they also wanted to impress upon us how important dredging was to the port. Not only the dredging in our area of Cecil County and the approaches to the canal, but to the dredging of the harbor area. And there's another area that they dredge further down the bay near the ocean. But the dredging was critical, especially with the new ships that will be coming in. They expect to come in, bigger ships with a draft of closer to 50 feet. These ships will bring in more business, and they feel that Baltimore, needs to be more competitive with the other East Coast ports, and they are trying to stay ahead of the other competition, whether it's New York, Norfolk, Miami, or the Georgia ports. There's quite a few ports on the East Coast, but they want to make sure that ships come in and out of their port. It continues to generate jobs and other economic opportunities in Maryland in general, and how Cecil County contributes to that effort. So they wanted to, even though I have to tell you that we, in my mind, cannot tell the port or the Army Corps of Engineers that we can't stop them from using the Pierce Creek dredging facility.
Right.
I think they want us to understand how necessary it is in the future for the port and for the shipping lines to stay open. And so, not that we can say yes, not that we can say no. I think that'll be up to the Maryland Department of Environment. They have they're holding the permit regarding the water quality permit that could prevent that facility from reopening. But at the end of the day, I think it was well worth the trip. I think that we all learned something, the different perspective that you had being there on the port itself, being on the water, looking at the port and the harbor and all of the shipping that's going on, not just by boat and ship, but also the railroads, the trucks, and other methods. It's not, it all works together. And there's no doubt that Baltimore and Maryland wants to stay in the forefront of the center of economic opportunity there in Baltimore.
Beyond the ships, the containers themselves are going to be larger. The new canal, once it opens, the present canal is still open. And one of the things that I find interesting from all the reading that I've done is Baltimore is going to become more important because Charleston, South Carolina cannot get the environmental impact study that they did previously authorized to do dredging for the 50-foot draft or whatever it may be. So they will not be able to take the larger vessels into Charleston. So that means there's one less port in competition with us as it stands right now.
Right. They already have 2 new cranes in place to take four new cranes in place to offload those larger ships.
The larger ships?
The
Super liners.
50-foot draft
Super.
ships.
Are they coming through the canal?
No.
No,
Through the new
yeah,
canal.
canal's not.
They can't come
but
through
they
the-
can come through the
I
Suez.
keep asking that question.
The
but-
Suez Canal.
They can come.
Chesapeake and Delaware Canal.
They have been visited by the larger ships that have come across the Atlantic Ocean rather than from the Pacific Ocean.
They went through the Suez Canal, and the Panama Canal will be able to handle the super ships. The Chesapeake, the Chesapeake Canal will never be able to handle them because we only have a 35-foot draft.
And not only is it only 35 feet deep, but the bridges, there's a clearance problem too. So they can't get under or through.
And it's not our bridges, it's the Reedy Point Bridge.
Right. Well, yes, but the fact is that there's no plans, none at this time, to bring the super ships through the canal. The C&D canal.
Recently, wasn't there the largest ship that had ever come through the canal? It was Fedcraft. It was on the Cecil Wave.
It wasn't the super ship.
But it was one of the largest ones that have ever come through.
Well, it depends upon whether it's loaded or not, because the draft is dependent upon what its weight is. So there's a possibility they sent one of the large ships through on loaded.
At the Pierce Creek open house, I appreciated I believe it was MDE that basically told the Army Corps of Engineers, you can't do business like you have in the past, where you say, we are the Army Corps of Engineers and we can do what we want.
should sue the federal government. Force the issue to the Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the council or make public comments or ask questions about anything on the agenda for tonight or any matter whatsoever? If we don't hear from anyone, we're going to adjourn the citizens' corner.
More people.
Anybody at all? Last call.
No.
Can I bring this up?
No.
I don't mind.
Oh, that's good fun. Okay, we were introduced with, or notified this morning that emergency legislation.
It's been changed, if you look in your packet, it's not emergency legislation anymore.
In my packet.
There was information on the table when we sat down.
Oh, okay, so now it's, no, this is, so the emergency legislation that was, going to be introduced is now,
A regular resolution, and will be introduced tonight, and then we will consider it and vote on it on July 2nd.
okay, and, is there a reason why it was changed? Was there,
We've revised by, I guess by the county attorney, I think you got a copy of that this morning as well. The emergency this probably did not fall under the emergency legislation guidelines.
okay, I was wondering about that, because I was reading emergency legislation, it said it had to be a bill?
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions regarding this? It's going to be item number 12 on our agenda.
Well, yeah, when this comes up, I'm definitely gonna be in opposition. And, yeah, I think, the deferral of the rate increase, is it just for hookups or for?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, well, let's not call it hookups, let's call it major facilities.
It's
called
only.
managed facility hookup fee in the resolution.
So, wasn't this a part of our budget that we
Yes.
adopted?
It's an amendment.
Okay. And, so, the developer, has his own study. He, altered the study to say that the hookup fees should not be increased, but the rates should have been increased. Wasn't that his argument at that meeting?
In my opinion of the meeting is that the person that requested the meeting had all kinds of suggestions, Did you consider raising the rate? Did you consider postponing, the other capital improvements? Did you consider? I don't remember him saying that this is the way it should be. I think that he was concerned because he was a little bit behind the 8 ball on the rational reasoning behind our decision. And I feel that, I don't think that he suggested that we should do anything other than asking us to reconsider all the options.
Okay, when I was there, what I heard was that, hey, I read this rate study and it's supposed to be a 5-year, 5-year looking out on the projects we're gonna do. And this, Tortoise Deposit Interceptor, is not gonna be, one of those projected 5-year projects. We need to remove that, and if we remove it, then there's gonna be a decrease in the hookup fees. I remember, I wrote down that he had said that the rates should have been higher. The projected hookup fees in one of the rate studies said it was supposed to be about $3,000 or $4,000. So.
Obviously, he has an advised opinion on what he believes would be beneficial. And there's no doubt that he would feel that having the ratepayers pay a higher rate to accomplish the same goal would benefit him because he wouldn't have to pay such a high major facility.
Well, good, I'm happy we agree that he's basically slanting his opinion based on what would be beneficial to him. What I wanted to point out is, I think he's correct about the Port Deposit Interceptor and about the rate study, and you're kind of validating that by
I don't think it was ignored. I don't think it was ignored at all. But
Now, you had said this morning-
I'm willing to postpone the enactment of the fee for further consideration and reinforcement. And I'm willing to listen. I'm sure that the executive branch is gonna defend, the conclusion that we all reached. I think that they will give us supporting documentation if we have questions. I haven't really seen anything yet that justifies a reduction, but I'm willing to consider all the options. And as you mentioned, yes, I had serious heartburn about adopting the $12,000 fee, and my heartburn was based on, I felt that it was a necessary increase, and I really would love to find a reason, a valid reason not to do it. But at the time, none was available.
Well, once again, you're talking about heartburn and feelings, and I tried to get the facts together, and I believe I presented some really good facts. And you had said this morning, and I'm gonna hold you to it, that by deferring this, you would even have the option of even reviewing, Senator Point.
I think everything's on the table
Okay.
for consideration. I will tell you that our discussion about the type of wastewater treatment has been discussed over and over again, and it's not likely that I'll change my mind unless there's some new development. But for the life of me, I don't understand why you want to preclude the opportunity to revisit this.
Because I see it as hypocrisy, that we really should be moving aside the $7.30 million NPR process when we've gotten proof that denitrification is the cheapest way to go, and Flanagan knowingly withheld the letters from us, from MDE and GHD, telling us that, and tried to give us the impression we voted for this NPR process on August 16th, 2011, and you were the one asking him the question, are we obligated to stick with this process? Are we now solidifying that this is the process we will be obligated to undertake? And he emphatically said no, that this is only for the engineering, for the xenon engineering, $100,000 to incorporate that into the plans.
Does anyone else in the audience have any discussion, any questions?
Yes. Joe Carabetta, very well. I think that the rate study does need to be readdressed, and that includes the whole rate study, including the service fee to the service, the people receiving the service. Okay, and here's why. Why should the ratepayers of that system have to incur capital costs for costs that are being improved to increase the capacity beyond what is needed for the service that is currently being provided? We already provided the money. I have on my bill every quarter the hookup fee, which I went back and checked the paperwork, was for capital expenses. And that was to take care of the plant. Now you're coming back and asking for more under a certain. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair to the taxpayer or the ratepayer, and it's not the right thing to do. You need to put the cost where the costs lie, on the users that are going to benefit from that increased flow capacity of the plant. Now, I think there's an alternative that you could do. I've seen it done in other areas where people get capital credits for on their service bill. So if you're in the system for so long, you would get a capital credit if indeed part of our service fee is going. So then every year as new customers come online, all these customers were supposed to show up, then the current users, the users who have been paying for this system the longest, will get money back and be paid back for their upfront money. There's an option for you that's fair to the ratepayers, and not, I think, quite frankly, where you're headed now, you're headed for a court case because of a class action lawsuit against the county for trying to take capital expenses for other people that is not being served by. We don't need the capacity for that plan. We don't need the extra capacity for the current user. You're trying to make future users, or current users pay for future users, and I don't think that's right. I just don't think it's
Mr.
right.
Carabet, it's my understanding that the current rates and the proposed rates, user rates, aren't sufficient to cover the cost of operation.
That's
That-
not what
and
your
let me
rates
finish,
are.
Joe. It's my understanding that the connection fees actually have been subsidizing the operations. It's my understanding that, that the reserve for capital improvements, because normally in my mind, the way it should work is all the capital, major facility fees should be put into a separate fund for capital improvements.
I'm
And
with
that the operating revenue from users should be paid for the operations. That's the fairest thing, is that one is one pot and one's the other. Those pots have been mixed together, and quite frankly,
And who
because
did the mixing? Who did the mixing?
the enterprise fund within the department,
The county.
the county, that's right.
The county did the mixing.
And so at the end of the day, capital improvement, hookup fees, major facility fees, connection fees, whatever you wanna call them, have been subsidizing the operations. And I think that that's still gonna continue. I don't believe that the users have been subsidizing, growth or capacity. I don't know where you came up with that.
That is in your rate study, Mr. Hodge.
Okay.
It is, President Hodge, it's right in your rate study. I showed, the night that Jackie was here blasting about it, I showed her, it's right, I'll be glad to sit down and show it to you. It's right in your own rate study. Please read your own rate study. It's right in there. It has diagrams with little arrows, and it's, some of it's a capital cost. And I wish I had it with me here tonight. I'd be glad to show it.
Some capital costs are required for upgrades. They're not
The
capacity.
upgrade, I understand that, but the upgrades that are required are for the nutrient reduction, which you get about $11 million back from the state, which is money we already paid for on our flush fee. We've already paid that. Now you're asking us to pay again. It's not right.
There are lots of upgrades that are not related to capacity. There's lots of upgrades that are not even related to nutrient removal.
Do you agree with the MBR? Have you looked at the documents? Do you think the denitrification?
I have not studied it from an engineering standpoint, but to me, I think we should go, in these times of economic crisis, we are in economic crisis. People can stick their head in the sand. We are headed for more trouble than what you can even imagine. We should go with the least expensive system possible. We have much more capacity. How long has that plant been there? How long has Seneca Point been there?
It's at 19.
About 72 maybe. And in all that time, and all this, we had good growth during the 80s and 90s with Reagan and Clinton. We only got up to 800, 900,000 gallon capacity. Now we expect we're going to give from 900,000 to 5 million in 10 years.
No, they acknowledge that's not gonna happen, and even Flanagan claims that we can go up to 5 MGD, we're at 2 MGD, we're only using half of that, less than half. We can go up to 5 with denitrification, I've heard 7, and when
That's what I'm saying, is that
yeah,
we don't need it.
and
We
that's
don't need
way
it.
in the future. And we know science and technology changes. Why are we planning so far into the future? And just the misinformation I've gotten from Director Flanagan, I want to go back and look at where has he been getting his numbers from? Knowing that the rate study was based on a whole bunch of different visionary growth plans way in the future, not the 5-year scope, but way into
I
the
think
future.
it went out to 2035 or something.
Yes.
And I'm all for planning ahead, but I think you're.
But you should be
too much.
paying for his plan way ahead.
No,
That's
I don't
what's
wanna
happening.
pay for it. I don't wanna pay for it. I pay enough already. This state is going crazy. And the cost to the taxpayers, or the ratepayers, should be what their costs are. And if we're saying that we're polluting the bay, which I don't believe, I think the Susquehanna River's polluting the bay, but that's an argument for another day, then we would pay for that. But guess what? You've gotten the money from the state to pay for that. That would cover the cost. But we're going to go up and beyond. We're improving head gate capacity. I read the report. I read the numbers. I went through them. I know what's going on. And the ratepayers are getting the shaft in this deal. And I said it before you passed it. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep saying it. Because we're getting the raw deal. We're paying for somebody else's expansion, and that isn't right. And anybody at that table knows that if you were in business or in private, you would not want to pay for somebody else's benefit.
Well, I have a proposal. There seems to be an interest in my reimbursable expenses, and I've let Mr. Massey know. If anybody asks, this is public information, please share that information. I'm proposing that I put my disclosures on my website. I would like to ask if Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Hodge would mind if I put their disclosures on my website. Do you have a problem with that?
What disclosures?
Your public disclosures that you file with the county. And I believe they're public.
Let people go up and pay the dollar to get them themselves.
It's not $1.
What's it cost?
I put about 10, you got a lot of pages, Mr. McCarthy, and so does Mr.
And how
Hodge.
would you
Mr.
do
Hodge
this?
has more
I'll be
pages.
asking.
But it's a public disclosure. You don't have a problem with that, do you?
No, I would prefer that you did,
Oh,
but if you would
what
say.
does that have to do with that?
What does that have to do with the rate study?
This is interesting.
What does that have to do with the rate study?
Patriots,
Yeah,
open
we're not the way
transparency.
paid.
Oh my goodness, Donna, what's the problem?
I said, what does that have to do with the rate study? You just jumped to disclosures.
It's
That's all.
fine.
Wait, hold it, time out. Joe, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I didn't get an answer, hold on.
I got a lot.
No, this is, Joe has the floor. Are you done, Joe?
No, I'm
You
not.
know, to the best of my knowledge, you'd probably take those things and alter them to suit yourself.
Oh, no, I promise that won't happen. Mr. McCarthy, is it okay?
All right, listen, hold it, come on.
Why are you banging that thing?
Joe, would you finish your comments, please, or your
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you. I propose, this is what I propose you do. I propose you take your rates back to where they were before the budget, form a true citizens and stakeholders committee to sit down and study what is in the best interest of the county. And, because I think you're killing yourselves, because I think these rates, both the hookup fee and the service fee, are gonna do the opposite of what you all want, which is growth. And it's not sustainable. The costs are ridiculous. You're putting these on a homeowner that's trying to build a house. How are they gonna do that?
How are we gonna attract
How are we
growth?
gonna pay our service fees when people are, you have an aging population where people are moving from regular income to fixed income? It's an absolute disaster. And I think that the best thing to do is retrograde the rates back to where they were. Let's sit down and study this thing, and let's look for options. For instance, this program that I propose as a capital credits program. I think that it could be an option. I'm sure there's many other options out there. But what you did was wrong. It's unfair, and I think actionable as a class action lawsuit because of and I think there was a lawsuit, and we're going to look it up, back when the rates were increased on the landfill for future use that wasn't necessary, and the county had to retrograde the rates back because they're going to lose the case. So,
Okay.
I mean, that is an issue.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
I don't need to, I just have a
Yes,
question, 'cause I'm trying to
Would
understand all this.
you please
Just
get on?
when you're saying pay it forward, my question, Donna called out the mayor, so I'm trying to understand all this, so who pays the rates, like when we moved in, who pays them up front there? Didn't somebody already pay those rates to build what?
What bill are you talking about?
To be honest with you, in the beginning, I think that the taxpayers funded the plant and the facilities because there was nobody connected at the start. Now, I don't know back in when it was started whether there was even a connection fee. Mr. Wine, do you remember if there was a connection fee in the beginning of time?
You're talking about the construction.
The beginning of the plant.
The construction of Center Point?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe that was done at a time when the EPA was offering like 75% grants.
Right, a lot of it was grant money,
Because that's when,
right.
during that period.
Clean Water Act.
Yeah, during that period,
Right.
Federal
money.
It was later on in the 80s too. Perryville, Elkton, and Happy Grace, they were able to avail themselves of. It ended up being over 85% with the state kicking in.
It was even higher than that.
Yeah, I think it was 87 and a.
We put money in some of that.
Yeah.
Right, that was grant.
Farmers Center.
And in some cases, it was very, 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 very low
Yeah.
interest funding, finance.
That's correct.
And some of it was even forgivable, which means they gave it to us, basically. So, but since that time, it's been a balancing act to have the users pay the operational cost plus some future upgrades. Nothing lasts forever. Everything is going to wear out and have to be rebuilt, redesigned, and upgraded eventually. So it's only fair that the users that are using it have to pay a small amount of that. I don't care if we never ever increase the capacity, motors and pumps and technology and rules and regulations change, that those users need to put up a little bit of money to bring that plant up to code in the future. So the fact is that I don't believe that's been happening. The rates that the county commissioners have approved in the past have not matched what rate studies have recommended. The rate studies are done. The Public Works Department came to the county commissioners, and the county commissioner said, no, we can't do that. That's going to scare people. We're elected officials. We're afraid of doing the right thing. We're going to raise them a little bit, but not sufficiently raise them enough to do what is required to operate the system in an efficient manner and also provide some reserves for future. So, unfortunately, or fortunately, I find that some of these county councilmen have said, hey, enough is enough. We're not playing around anymore. Let's just do it. Let's get it done with, and let's make it so that the wastewater treatment plant is a self-sustaining, self-supporting enterprise. And I give those council members credit for doing that, but it is a lot to bite off in one chunk. And there are some consequences for that. And so it's a political decision, and it was made.
Are you ignoring everything I just said? You know, how can you buy into the rate study, the numbers, after the source of that information is not being
Let me say this. You said it, and I agree with you, that going in a different direction is the cheapest way. But I have to tell you, and everyone in this audience, I hope you understand that the cheapest way is not the best way. The cheapest way has some short-term benefits and long-term costs.
You know, I wish you could back up what you're saying from real data. I asked, you told me that you're exactly right. You should have had a pilot study. He should be bringing us the information to justify going to NPR. I was waiting for him to do that. He never did. He said he put his employees on a plane to go watch the NPR process in another state, in another system. That was what he based it on. And the Xenon system is going to use more electricity.
I think on balance, in the long haul, I think that we spent hours and hours and hours of comparison and the pros and the cons. And obviously your mind was made up when there was discussion.
Where's that information? Hours and hours of
Scott Flanagan provided to us a list, a whole host of
They had a
benefits.
discussion. No. He said they had a discussion. And that's what they based it on their discussion, on just the benefits that they came up with.
All I can say is you must have been not sitting at the same meetings that I had to sit through, where there was discussion.
What were the benefits?
First of all, in the future, in the future, the expansion of the facility will be cheaper on a per gallon basis or per 1,000 gallon, it'll be cheaper. Secondly, the
Okay,
water,
you have
the
the
water,
numbers.
the
You
water
have the
that
numbers
comes
for
out.
that. No, that's
the
a
water-
real general
The water that comes
statement.
out of that plant will be much cleaner than through the denitrification filter. The membrane filters will clean the water
Will
up
the
cleaner.
denitrification be up to ENR standard? I believe we have the letter that said yes.
It will be up to ENR standards
Okay.
temporarily.
Which
But the
means-
fact is, every 3 to 4 or 5 years, the Maryland Department of Environment continues to change the rules and make the bar higher, or I would say
So
higher and
now you
higher
can
to
look
meet.
into the future, and you're basing your decision on being able to look into the future. We're gonna have to have this.
I know that Maryland Department of Environment has been making governments, municipalities, private wastewater treatment systems meet more and more stringent requirements every time they get reviewed.
And
It's
as
a fact, it's a fact. There's no reason to believe that that will not continue. The new system that we were considering will help us meet those more stringent requirements in the future. There's no
All I
doubt
know
about
is
it.
we had 2 letters saying the denitrification was good enough, and we know that technology does change, and you're right, environmental regulations change. We need to worry about here and now, and 5, 10 years in the future, that's good enough. And, not be talking about the build out of 10 MGD on the current site, the current footprint, which takes us how many years into the future? 50 years maybe?
I guess I'm a long-term picture guy and not wanting to look at the short term.
We don't, as Joe was pointing out, we don't have that luxury. You know, these are hard economic times. We need to be making fiscally responsible decisions.
Is there anyone else that has any thoughts, comments, suggestions, questions about tonight's meeting or anything else? Okay.
Who would like to see their disclosure statements?
Obviously, just you.
Okay.
Oh, who's that?
That was him right here.
That was me.
Oh,
Why do you wanna say him? Who cares?
it tells a really good story.
Well, we already have some stories, so we.
Again, their stories. Your stories
Right.
are not fact.
We're adjourning the Citizens Corner. We'll be back at 7 o'clock with our regularly scheduled legislative meeting.